I'm very much also excited about the days that we are passing through on earth, and I'm more excited about the year that we are coming into next year. The Bible says God does nothing without revealing his secret to his servant, the prophet. And those of you who have been with me, and those of you who have been connected in associates and friends all over the world, we recognize that God starts speaking to Alfred from October preceding each year about what will happen the following year. Because I set my heart to gain understanding as a watchman in the household of God Global. And the things that God has spoken to me over the years have happened exactly by month and time that God said it. Because God is not a man that he should lie, or a son of man that he would change his mind. And so now God has begun to speak to me again, really this year, I think from the month of June, when we had a 40 days of night vigil, along with our daily prayer, which is today 248 nights. We have been gathering together and praying every day. In the midst of that, God told us to also have 40 days of prayer in June, which we added to it, which is a vigil. After the 7 o'clock prayer, we move into the vigil. And then we have seen God gave quite a lot of revelation. It was in that encounter God began to show me the new year as a year of lights. And can I just say, it is not light, but plural lights. And I began to see lights manifesting across the globe. And the Lord continued to speak to me because, you see, prophetic is in parts. And once you begin to hear and you turn your mind to understanding, then you will increase in hearing and knowledge and sight. And so God continued to reveal to me again and again, consistently about various chambers of things that he wants us to know for next year. But let me say this to you, as I will be talking very much on this in December. And if you have been watching and been praying with us every day, you will discover that each day another thing is added by God. Each day another revelation will come in the realm of what is going to happen. It is very, very strange for Christians to enter New Year without knowing what God is going to do. God is not like that. The God of Christians is the God who speaks. And I have been dwelling over the week on how you can hear God distinctly. And we looked into the area of speaking in tongues and praying in tongues, the grace of tongues, and how that is for every Christian from the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and chapter 14. And we have seen that the major issue of believers is laziness. Hallelujah. Many Christians turn their energy into material things that will rot. And when it comes to spiritual things, they are very sluggish. But the word of God remains. And these we have gone through it again and again. And we have seen even children manifesting in the gift of this Spirit, the gift of the Spirit. And some of them I'm bringing on air to my television program, they spoke on Wednesdays. And so, why am I saying this to you? Because I told you that for the month of November, I believe very much strong, because I have a strong urge that I should teach you about 21st century leadership. A bit of it is what I've just introduced you to. But all what I've been teaching is just introduction. There are deeper things to talk about 21st century leadership. However, I recognize that in talking about 21st century leadership, we didn't have more time. I have to skip many things to start talking to you about 21st century leadership enablement or enablers. So last Sunday we looked at leadership enablers, and I will talk more about leadership enablers. I want to first say thank you to a good number of commentaries or comments I've been hearing, and the texts I've been receiving from different parts of the world, especially from people who are in management position at top, high-level directorship or executives. Today we are going to talk a little bit more about these enablers, and my own heart is to help us understand that intellectual reasoning is just an offshoot of the little knowledge from the Bible, because you will find all these things in the Bible. And if you can understand the Bible source of it, it will be easier for you to implement, because people hear lectures, but the reason why many do not fulfill what they hear is because man has ability to hear I think it's a consensus among intellectual reasoning that 25, the genius can understand 25% and retain 25% of what is spoken if you speak for 30 minutes. However, I want to say to you that not so with those who are spiritual. Those who are spiritual can go beyond that, because when you hear as a spiritual person and you can have references to spiritual words, and then the words in the spiritual reside in your heart, which is in your spirit man. And so when the time comes for you to use it, either for secular world or for intellectual stuff or for your career-wise and interviews, and also for business and for spiritual, Holy Ghost will bring it to your memory. And this is what I'm happy about, to be able to trace, what people hear, intellectually to what people hear intellectually to the scriptures. So we agree together that in the last days, Jesus said, in the last days, in Matthew chapter 24, verse 21, it says, "For then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again." That is in the last days. And if you agree with me, we have never had a time in our generation where, the whole world had been so disarrayed just because of a little tiny microorganism called virus. And we have never had an occurrence in the world that was so problematic that the mighty nations are falling and they are not able to conquer. We have never had situations that is global like that. The amazing thing about this virus is that if you look at the countries that are not very, very affected, the third world countries that are not fully armed, they are not as affected as the first world countries, who are fully armed in every ramification. Now, that is something to think about. We have never had a situation that one thing happened in a country which is related to just one stream of life, which is health. And then before you know it, it spun through, it went across the nations, and then organizations like OEDC began to speak about it. The ministers of the central bank of each nation began to panic. The government and the Senate, that is the judiciary, the legislators, and the executives of all nations began to panic. They were equally affected. And I will say this to you, that if someone says to me, this is not what Jesus is talking about, I will ask you what other thing can happen that you can believe that Jesus is talking about. Jesus said there will be distress, great distress, unequal. That is distress that had never happened before the time. And now I told you also that when I began to introduce this lecture, that the situation of COVID-19, or the impact of COVID-19, can never be accurately evaluated until 3 to 7 years, because that occurrence gave birth to ripple effects. It is not the occurrence itself. The occurrence is now being abated because now we have vaccine. But the ripple effect that will come from the occurrence of COVID, let me say this to you. If you are listening to me now and you are engaged yourself in some of that, you better stop every engagement now and just focus and write, because you will need my voice next year. You will need what I'm going to tell you today. You will need it in 2011, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 26, 27. What I'm telling you now. So if you understand what I'm saying to you and let it sink into you, don't assume you have read. Dump all those stuff, my friend. Reason and see what God is saying, and then go and check out what you have read with it. That will help you to prepare, have accurate and adequate preparation, because the Lord spoke to me about these things. Now, let's go ahead. Now, if Jesus said there will be great distress, unequaled, It means, therefore, that if we look at the context where we are now, this is the sign. Unless if in another context in the future, something worse than this happened. But I will say to you that this is the beginning of birth pain, Jesus called it. And what we're going to see on earth for the next 30 years, if Jesus tarries, is going to be a progressive, incidental manifestation that will offset human ability, transcend human intellectualism, and cause more disarray to human collectively. That is the reason why it is necessary for you and I, if we are living to that time or beyond that time, to understand the perspective of the scriptures. That you can be very, 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 and very, very, very ready. And you will not be obsolete. Jesus said, first thing, there will be distress unequal. Second thing, it says from the beginning of the world until now, at that time the occurrence will happen. And it says, and never to be equaled again. So that is qualifying the season, that this season that will come when this scripture is fulfilled will be a season that will bring an end to the world. That is a season that will bring the coming of Jesus Christ. Because he said, never shall it be equal. And we understand the fact that the world cannot have peace until the Prince of Peace intervenes. Really, what Jesus is saying is that the calamity will be so much to the place whereby nobody wants it again. But there's one more thing that Jesus qualified with. In verse 22, he says, if those days had not been shortened, no one would survive. So if Jesus said, if those days have not been shortened, no one will survive, that we can know from the manifestation of COVID, that it will be a plague. Because what can wipe up the whole world within twinkle of an eye is a plague. This plague that we have is COVID, and it is transmitted from man to man. Imagine a plague that operates by breathing, by air. How would that be contained by man? I'm not talking about a plague that communicates from man to man, but a plague that is in the atmosphere. Technology and reason of man have not got there yet. But let me help you know this. Also, this scripture lets me know this, that when that season comes, every Christian must be sensible, because that will bring the end to time. Because the effect of it, if God did not intervene, no human being will be alive. Having said that to you, therefore, let us go into a few other things. I told you that, those who are intellectual, you know to know this, that intellectual reasoning came from God. God just gave man a little bit about himself, and man began to use the brains God gave. They also have picked up about the end time, and they said the end time will be a time that there will be so much volatility of occurrences, uncertainty will be set up. It will set into communities and nations. Problems that are so complex will happen, will be marked by complexity. And then ambiguous circumstances and situations that will challenge the norm and will cause the norm to change. I want to be very sensitive about this. If you are still what you used to be, I will not say that such a person is doomed, but you are not far away from being doomed. Let me give you an example. You know that one of the things that I told you, which is agreed together, is that technological advancement is one of the most challenges to industry. Let me give you one understanding. Now COVID-19 had woken up the brains of a lot of scientists, and they began to research those in the medical field and immunology and stuff like that, they began to research on COVID-19 and they began to discover cures for other diseases. Now they are targeting to eradicate cancer. Okay? Now let me tell you this. When they discover what will eradicate cancer, do you know how many millions of people work in industry that are set up just for cancer? Will they be necessary anymore? No, they'll be shut down. They'll be shut down. Everybody who have been working in cancer research, cancer this, cancer that, we don't need it anymore because it's eradicated. It's just like polio. Polio, you don't need polio research, but it's gone. What about when those industries go? What about the chain effect of those industries? That is the value chain. Organizations that, because the industry of cancer exists, those organizations emerged. And they have to produce components that are necessary for cancer research and cancer stuff to operate. They will all be obsolete. What is that telling you? Joblessness. Let me give you an example now. Current occurrence. Like this week, we were told that Akeda is gone. Akeda owns in England a number of industry, garment industry, button and the rest of them. All this strange type of clothing that was introduced to humanity, Akeda is in charge of them. But let me say this to you. Why is Akeda going down? Because the COVID-19, the measures taken by the government to curb COVID-19 so that it will not spread and keep on killing people, now frustrated the norm of operation of some industries. And the industries that have not prepared, who are not proactive, industries who are not 21st century mental, that is, they are not futuristic in their approach towards their operation, discover that their normal life of business is being ruffled, and by the time they are trying to struggle with it, they are extinct. They are extinct. I told you in June, when we were praying, God told me this, that industries are closing down now, but this time is not much. But next year, you see many more industries go. And I told you that some industries who are giant, they will just boom, face out. They will face out because the challenge brought by COVID-19 has sent human beings into into a revolution of thoughts in the area of invention, in the area of technology, in the area of, why they are trying to invent technology to solve this problem. They discover that that technology can also solve the other 3, 4, 5 problems. Okay? So what will happen in the new year is that you will see big industries, but in the center of the industry, already because of COVID-19 blow, there have been a created lacuna, a vacuum, and they will collapse suddenly. But as they are collapsing suddenly, okay, you will see emergence of new industries because of the new ideas, because of people who are 21st century minded, who in their own understanding, whenever any challenges come, they face it and they have been preparing for challenges and they'll begin to come up with innovation. A new set of industries will emerge, which will need new set of educationists. And some people have to change their trade because their trade is not needed in this planet anymore. So if somebody is not adaptive in their own mental, if somebody is not a person who can easily change and learn something else, what happens to them? They are jobless. In Africa, they don't have social security. What happens to people like that? In England, you can be taking social money. As somebody who lives a very high life because you're earning high, and now you have to be depending on dough. Can you imagine frustration that will happen? So, therefore, we recognize that what Jesus claimed and said in that Matthew 24 about distress, great distress, he qualified it, and or tribulation, unequaled, we have entered into it. Some commodities have been flying in their prices over the years. by next year they will be begging people to come and buy them for nothing. So prices of commodities will crash, because it's when you have money you can buy expensive stuff. Really, people will be so much afraid that those who have money want to keep their money, okay? Because they don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. This one closed down today, that one closed down tomorrow, this one, who knows what's going to happen? When they close their money, we understand by economics that those who sell commodities will suffer. It will force the price of commodities down, because people are not buying as they used to. You can imagine what will happen to the salaries of the industries that are working in commodity production. They have to peg it down. They have to. Everybody have to begin to think wide now. If your organization decides that instead of laying off all your staff, the staff, we have to cut salaries to half, then what happens? You will prefer to be in job and take half, whereas your expenses in life too is still there. It will knock down many things. That is the reason why I will progress into telling the church of God. Why is Apostle telling you this? This is not a matter of intercession. There is a place for intercession. This is not a matter of fasting. All right? This is a matter of transformation, I may say. And so last week I told you the things that can enable leaders. And when I say leader, remember that I define my leadership from one person. Every individual, you are a leader, because you are a potential leader if you are not a leader yet now. So when I say leader, I mean every human being, from whatever level you are into, those who are managing big organizations. I told you that there are two things I saw in Jesus Christ that can sum the weather. Number one is a transformational leadership approach. An approach in life that wants to see others fulfill their dreams. And in helping others fulfill their dreams, little do you know that you have really a greater dream. That is transformational leadership. And the church needs it. It is a leadership that set examples to people. The church needs it. Second one is servant leadership. That is a leadership that takes the place of people to cover for their weakness. That's a servant leader. A leader who will give people assignment to do, and he will stand behind them and inform them and back them up until they fulfill it. And if you look at that, is the intersection of transformational leadership and servant leadership. Haven't gone through a lot of information about that today, last week. I want to remind you on the five factors that can enable your leadership so that you can have impact. Number one is innovation. Number two is collaboration. Number three is cooperation. Number four is stakeholders engagement. And number five is creativity. Now let me say something to you. You may be saying that this statement, do they relate to me? Yes, I help you understand how that relates into marriage. Innovation is not continuing to do the same thing and trying to improve on it. No, this is departure from norm. I will talk a little bit about innovation because we're going to look at a case study today in the Bible and a few number of references. Innovation involves new ideas applied. First of all, it involves derivative of new ideas, departing from none, and focusing on something and inventive, and then applying the new derivatives that you have seen that can work. Not trying to patch your old system that is not adequate for the context. And the result of that is that it improves your product of service. It improves your product of services. And also improves your organizational practices and strategies. Let me say something to you. When in an organization a new thing is invented or innovated, You see exuberance in everybody. Everybody wants to add to it. Everybody wants to see it. Everybody wants to look at what they can do to make it work. And you need that sort of spirit in industry next year. Is an industry that lacks that is getting towards extinction.
Between the years of 1984 and 1999, Apostle Alfred Williams was taken to heaven on various occasions where he was shown global events that would lead up to the year of 2015. And in 1999, the Apostle was powerfully shown the coming calendar for the world.
I want you to understand that the first war was in heaven, the first victory was in heaven, and it takes the man of heaven to win the earthly battle.
In December 2009, God instructed Apostle Alfred Williams to go into all the world and let them know that I am coming. Beloved, with this powerful instruction behind us, it is now time for us to arise, shine, and win every house for Jesus. Now is the time for the final preparation of the bride of Christ. A final trumpet call to righteousness in this time that is running out before the rapture of the church. Join us on this dynamic campaign to reach every house in Britain. They need to hear the call. Who will tell them if we do not? This is the prophesied time of harvest. It is now time for us to win every house for Jesus. For more information, call 020 7635 0447 or visit cftchurches.org. The time has come to arise, shine, and win every house for Jesus.
Behold, I am coming soon.